Hi folks, Joseph Kursky here with you to talk about a new spatial thinking test that I devised that matches aerials to 3D scenes. Aerials to 3D scenes. If we agree that fostering spatial thinking in education and society is important, how can we know if we are succeeding in this effort? Many people rightly want to find out what the most effective ways of measuring spatial thinking are and how to implement them. Assessing spatial thinking has been discussed over the past few decades, really, in venues from research articles to conference panel sessions, resulting in a small but growing set of spatial thinking measures. In this video and the accompanying essay, I describe a new spatial thinking test that is straightforward, but one that could provide numerous benefits to instructors and even to the students taking the test. A key way of fostering spatial thinking is the use of GIS technology, Geographic Information Systems technology, and approaches in education. This has been the subject of many essays in the ESRI education community space, theses and dissertations by students from all over the world, research articles such as this one, and even entire books such as ones I have contributed to and many others that my colleagues have written, such as this one right here. I recently wrote this essay describing 10 key educational benefits in teaching with GIS. One benefit cited by many is spatial thinking. Read my own definition of it here. Assessing the results of spatial thinking is complicated. It's messy and it's influenced by many variables, including the method used to foster it, the instructional setting, the learning styles and background of the student, and many others. Nevertheless, educators and others have attempted to devise and test assessments that measure spatial thinking. Most of these are focused on the broad definition of spatial thinking, which includes cognitive psychology. Spatial thinking is a much broader in scope. It's actually much broader in scope than geospatial thinking. Spatial thinking tests often include rotating 2D and 3D shapes, such as this one from Newton and Bristol. You can take this type of spatial thinking test yourself here. The attention that spatial thinking is beginning to receive in disciplines outside of geography, GIS, and environmental studies has netted some spatial visualization measures in those disciplines too, such as in engineering. Most of us in geotechnology education are really focused on geospatial thinking. Geospatial thinking assessments are fewer in number than those in the wider spatial thinking community, but have been developed and successfully used. The most oft-cited is probably Lee and Bednar's Spatial Thinking Abilities Test, or STAT, created in conjunction with the Teacher's Guide to Modern Geography, TGMG, project of the American Association of Geographers, or AAG. Other researchers have adapted and modified this test in Japan, for example, and others have created new tests in Spain, in Greece, in Europe, and in Canada. In what I hope is a valuable contribution to these assessment efforts, I've devised a spatial thinking assessment activity that takes advantage of the easy-to-use 3D scene viewer, part of the ArcGIS platform. The lesson is as follows. Ask students to create a new 3D scene in ArcGIS Online. In the 3D scene, ask them to create one 3D scene slide for each digital oblique aerial photo that you, the instructor, supplies. The challenge is that the student's 3D scene slide must match as closely as possible the angle to the ground, the scale, the cardinal direction to which the aerial is aligned. Why use oblique aerials? They provide an extra challenge and an intuitive link to the 3D scene capabilities, though you could certainly use traditional straight from above imagery from ArcGIS Online or other sources as well. If you use straight from above imagery, you could use ArcGIS Online or the ArcGIS Online 3D Scene Viewer or even ArcGIS Pro. In my case, I'm using oblique imagery and the ArcGIS Online 3D Scene Viewer. That's a lot of words, I realize, but it'll seem quite straightforward when I demonstrate it. With gracious permission from my colleague Vern Witten, who owns his own aerial and outdoor photo company, Vern Witten Photography, I'm using a set of aerials that Vern flew in Minnesota and North Dakota in summer 2021 in this collection. In the activity and assessment, the student first examines an image from the collection, for example right here. The student then enters the latitude and longitude shown at the bottom of the image in the search box in the ArcGIS 3D Scene Viewer. The student then simultaneously examines by toggling back and forth in separate browser tabs the aerial and the 3D scene, adjusting the latter so it matches the former. In a few minutes, I created the following 3D scene and captured it as a slide, shown here in this next section. For this demonstration, see this next section of the video. For example, the students have to figure out how to create this 3D scene that most closely matches in scale, orientation, etc., this oblique aerial of this church. Another example, here's Middle River, Minnesota. How do they create a 3D scene that matches that aerial? And here's my attempt right here. So they're toggling between the oblique aerial and creating a 3D scene. Here is the Agassiz National Wildlife Refuge. So how do I most closely create a 3D scene that captures, again, that exact oblique aerial view? One last one as a demonstration. Thief River Falls, Minnesota. Noting the features, the angle, the distance viewed. And in this case, I've got the clarity imagery layer. In the essay, I describe how to add additional aerial and satellite imagery to your 3D scene.